Our second speaker is a rural independent from Tipperary who has long since, I guess, has a reputation for being a principled politician. So much so that he left his own party many years ago over such principled positions, I guess, to do so. He's been probably the longest defender of free speech in the Dáil that I know of today. Please put your hands together for Mattie McGrath.
Sorry, like Shan, for being a bit late, and we're up there tonight debating all kinds of legislation and it's votable. But this bit of legislation, and I really enjoyed your commentary, but I'd love to bend it. It doesn't deserve to be debated, but it won't be bent. Unfortunately, it's very much on the way to find its way into legislation. It went to a first stage and a second stage. Normally we debate second stage pretty long amount of time and get normal good speaking times on it, but the minister, and then when second stage is concluded you get time to put in amendments for report stage and for committee. But before second stage committee is now last Thursday fortnight, I think, or 3 weeks maybe tomorrow, the date for amendments had already elapsed. So that's the indecent haste and rush. And she was challenged by a good few at the time. I didn't happen to be there, and I was in the committee, but Catherine Connolly and some others, in fairness, challenged her on that, and we had a challenge at the end as well. I spoke for 20 minutes on it, but look, she was indignant, the minister, to say that how could we dare say she was rushing this legislation. So I think legally, if it goes through, it has to be. It hasn't gone through the second stage process, first and second properly, and amendment stage. But that's where you are. But every politician that spoke for the 4 hours, I think, or 3.5 hours, was in favour, warmly in favour. Welcomed it. Was so many years too late by most of them, and the only two that spoke against it was Peadar Tóibín and Agus May Féin, and I was delighted to be able to speak against it, but this is where we're at in our wonderful House of Parliament at the moment, and we're celebrating the Free State at the setting up of our state today out at the back, which I reluctantly attended, but I was there. But imagine 100 years on, this is where we find ourselves. And you made reference as well, first speaker, to that about Europe, and I found that for the last 15 years, while I'm up there, or 16, coming, and before that every piece of legislation that they introduced from Europe, our NGOs have us lined up here to introduce more statutory instruments, more orders than any of the European intends. So we really add on, transposing here, we add and add and add and add. So, and in fairness to the EU, I suppose, to give them credit, it's the only place many organisations and people have had refuge in the last 10, 15 years for justice in the courts, the European courts, and that's an aside. But on this slippery slope, I don't know, it's meant to shut the likes of me up, certainly, and my colleague Senator Keogh and anyone like us, because we have the morality police of Breed Smith and Paul Murphy, and indeed Neil Richmond. When I spoke last week about the migration into our country, not from the war, but from several other countries with no paperwork, etc. They were tweeting immediately that I was dog whistling. And again, yesterday I raised it with the Taoiseach, or he wasn't there, sorry, to Michael McGrath. Breed Smith tried to shut me down. So that's where it goes. And that's sadly where we find ourselves in our republic at these times, because, we've spent $6 billion almost a year. This is a reply to a parliamentary question by Carl Nolan. 6 billion TD, 6 billion almost, 5.75 on NGOs annually. And while some do great work and they were set up for good intentions, but they've hijacked the political system, as far as I'm concerned. They have a willing government now, parties and all parties. The one I used to be, that my father was a founder member of, and I was in it all my life until 2011. Funny, I left it over stag hunting. I never saw a stag hunter. I was never at a stag hunt. I'm not a person who goes hunting, but I knew it was a thin end of the wedge many aspects of rural life in Ireland. But anyway, we won't be able to mention any of these things or have this meeting come March or April when this legislation is introduced. You will certainly won't be allowed to disseminate this kind of leaflet. Because the whole bill, and I bow to the experts here on legislation more than I am, I'm only a layman, but the whole bill has no definitions. It's totally vague. It has those 10 yes, or 12, and they'll be added to, no doubt, definitions that we can't talk about or we can't even think about. So they want to control our thoughts as well as everything else. And this has a number of prongs, because they're at it in the education system, they're at it in all across the sector of society. We've changed our culture and our country here that we won't know it in a few years' time, and we won't be able to even think or speak or do anything about it. It's very serious as far as I'm concerned, and I'm very concerned about it. It's a huge attack on democracy, and as I said, for at any level, whether you be elected person or a lay person, and everybody's entitled to have their say, I'm told. We can't have this debate on immigration, we're told now, in the Roxas, because we could mention something that wouldn't be, we're not safe to even have that debate. I look for, at the business committee, which I'm on, a member of, I wrote to him and raised it last week. I didn't get a senator to support me, so we might have it in the new year, or we may not have it at all, because that's sadly the kind of a conditioning that we have in the Parliament now. And there's a lot of ordinary people working in the Ulster House as well that are against in all this, but they can't say a word. So look, you all know where I stand on it, and I'm here to take questions as well, and whatever I compliment the organisers here. I'm not going to hog the microphone, because I have ample time to speak in the House. They try to gag me every now and then, but they might be able to gag me sometimes, but they certainly can't gag Senator Sean Keoghan. She won't be gagged by any of them, and she's refreshing. It's refreshing to have her in the Senate, and from my point of view, there's only a few of us up there really that after one of the referendums, I don't know which it was, I think it was the right to life or the remove the aid, two pretty senior journalists, I met him one night in the bar. And Mattie, we still like you, we just don't like the way you think. So I rest my case. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy McGrath.